Saros Victoria has always been a bit different. While most vampires are just violent, bloodthirsty creatures with unmanageable appetite, Saros is actually a devoted soldier completely hellbent on destroying her own kind. Though she was introduced to us as a mere human, the young policewoman has since grown into a formidable warrior capable of standing against even the most ferocious monsters that the world of Hellsing has to offer. But to truly understand Dracula's greatest protege, we will first have to take a look at the Saros Victoria's long and convoluted journey, and, well, it gets pretty dark at times. Saros Victoria's early years, her origin story. Though she might appear to be just a sidekick at first glance, Saros Victoria is actually quite integral to Hellsing's main storyline. Now, terrible events are pretty commonplace in Hellsing, but even by those standards, Saros still has had it pretty rough. Perhaps that's what turned into the monster we know today, but we are getting ahead of ourselves, so let's just head back to the bloody beginning. Saros is an original character created by the prolific mangaka Hirano, but this is strangely not her first appearance in the writer's work. A character uncannily similar to Saros made an appearance in one of Hirano's earlier outings, Hellsing: The Legends of a Vampire Hunter. Despite the similarities, this Hellsing prototype was drastically different from the one we know today. Back then, Saros was known as Yuri Kate. Even in this iteration, Saros finds herself under the employment of the Hellsing organization. But in a strange twist, it is the Valentine brothers who turn the young girl into a vampire. The earlier series didn't really take off as Hirano expected, but it left the mangaka with a bunch of extremely appealing characters who would soon find a place in Hirano's magnum opus. While working on Hellsing, the writer realized that the tone of the story was far too grim and dark, which led him to consider characters that could lend a certain warmth to his gory spectacle. Of course, he eventually found himself working on Saros Victoria, whom he later described as the light that stood out from the darkness. Hirano actually liked the character so much that he considered narrating the entire story from Saras's point of view. Though these plans were eventually abandoned, it's evident that Saros did end up becoming one of the most central figures in the entire Hellsing saga. Saros became one of the first additions to the Hellsing ensemble, and even though she was not named for the first few chapters, we all knew that this young girl was someone special. Hirano depicts Saros as an attractive young girl with fierce blue eyes. Despite her small stature, the young vampire has been shown to possess inhuman strength at times, especially when enraged. During these episodes, Saros's boundless rage is also reflected in her eyes, and a red hue begins to manifest. For most of the series, she is shown in her standard yellow policewoman's uniform, and well, it does suit her pretty well. And no, we're not blushing, you are. Though not much is known about Saros's childhood, that doesn't make her experiences any less traumatizing. The first time we catch a glimpse of Saros's childhood is during a flashback induced by Zoran Blitz, a member of the werewolf squad who was shown to have unmatched powers of psychological manipulation. Under Blitz's influence, Saros found herself lost in a dark memory, something that no one can really unsee. Consider this a trigger warning, because the events ahead are truly deplorable. During this flashback, we learn that Saros's father was a policeman back in the day. As a noble servant of the law, Mr. Victoria was assigned to an undercover mission, but unfortunately, things didn't go as planned. The criminal group Mr. Victoria had infiltrated managed to identify him and decided to follow him back home. Then, seizing their opportunity, these criminals brutally murdered Mr. Victoria right in front of his family. Saros's mother managed to hide her young child in a closet, but Mrs. Victoria herself wasn't that lucky. The invaders promptly killed the woman, but it is what they did afterwards that truly sends a shiver down your spine. In the final moments of this truly disturbing flashback, we watch from Saros's perspective as the bandits violate her mother's cold body. As tragic backstories, this one's quite unbeatable, to be honest. For most of Hellsing's story, Saros serves as an underling to Alucard, the greatest, most terrifying vampire to ever exist. Due to this, she showcased incredible growth throughout the show, even becoming a true vampire by the end of her arc. As one of the true undead, Saros is almost indestructible and exhibits powers similar to her master, Alucard. This power, combined with her indomitable will and wild temperament, makes Saros Victoria one of the greatest combatants in the world of Hellsing. She has also been shown to have an unwavering moral compass, which makes her an incredibly useful ally in a world filled with bloodthirsty monsters. Though she can certainly seem immature at times, she has still managed to cling to every last shred of humanity within her, despite choosing to become a vampire of her own accord. Saros's struggle with her own vampiric nature and horrid past actually makes this sniper-wielding policewoman one of the most relatable characters in the series, and well, we all love her for it. Now, without giving too much away, let's dive right into Saros's violent history in the Hellsing saga. The history of Saros Victoria in Hellsing After the brutal murder of her parents, a young Saras was left all alone to fend for herself. She eventually found her way into an orphanage, but the horrifying murder of one's parents is never really easy to forget. Just ask Batman. Jokes aside, Saras's trauma led to the young girl becoming a volatile and reserved individual who was prone to reacting violently against bullying. Due to Saras's violent nature, none of the teachers at the orphanage ever treated her kindly, which further aggravated her already rebellious nature. Despite these dire circumstances, Saras remained committed to her only dream, that of one day becoming a police officer just like her father. Against her teacher's advice, she managed to get into the force, a decision which eventually led her to the Hellsing organization. At the beginning of the Hellsing story, we find Saras as a part of the squad that was sent into the Cheddar village to investigate multiple homicides. As expected, it's a vampire, the village priest, who is to blame for all these murders. Moreover, the bloodthirsty clergyman also seems to have the entire village under his control, after turning all of its inhabitants into ghouls. Mere policemen are no match for the vampire and his ghouls, which leads to Saras being taken hostage. The vampire seeks to turn Saras into a ghoul, but is unsure whether she is still a virgin or not. He decides to take no chances and decides to solve the problem by raping Saras, which would make her the perfect ghoul. Fortunately, before the horrifying act can come to pass, Alucard arrives on the scene and takes control of the situation. The priest is forced to use Saras as a human shield in order to protect himself from Hellsing's greatest weapon. But as we all know, Alucard is someone way beyond human sentimentality. He asks Saras whether she's a virgin, to which she replies, yes. Satisfied with the answer, Hellsing then just calmly shoots through Saras to kill her captor. As the policewoman lay dying, Alucard offers her a choice, either die as a human or live forever as a vampire. And well, she just chose the latter. After Saras's conversion into a vampire fledgling, she is immediately hired by the Hellsing organization due to her unique condition. Though Saras is a newbie, Integra, the chief of Hellsing, doesn't really go easy on her new recruit. Almost immediately after joining the paranormal organization, Saras is given a new uniform and sent out on a mission to eliminate a household infested with ghouls. This is the first collaborative effort we see between Alucard and Saras, with the young vampire doing pretty well for herself until a certain psychopathic priest decides to show up. Longtime fans will undoubtedly know that it's Father Alexander Anderson we are talking about, and goddamn, that man is a true monster. Working at the behest of the Vatican's military wing, the Iscariot, Father Alexander wreaks hell upon the ghouls and eventually turns to Saras. After easily incapacitating the fledgling with a couple of well-placed blades, he begins to walk menacingly towards Saras. Fortunately, Saras's master, Alucard, is there to protect her, and a fierce fight ensues. After a couple of brutal exchanges, Anderson manages to decapitate Alucard, which misleads Saras into believing that her master is dead. In a desperate move, she pulls out Anderson's blades and begins to flee the battlefield with Alucard's head. This is when Saras finally witnesses the true extent of her master's immortality, as Alucard's voice beckons her to drink his blood and become a true vampire. Saras, however, remains hesitant, which leads Anderson to catch up with her. Saras seems to be at the end of the road. Just then, Alucard is resurrected. In addition to them, even Integra Hellsing arrives at the location, which resolves the conflict. After this violent encounter, Saras returns to the Hellsing mansion, where she must adjust to life as a vampire. But come on, sleeping in a coffin is no big deal when you get immortality and super strength in exchange. Walter, Hellsing's butler, also introduces Saras to her new weapon, the anti-tank cannon named Halkonen. We don't have to wait too long to see this badass machine in action. As the Hellsing mansion falls under attack soon after, well, it's never really a bad time for some good old-fashioned firepower. Things are made even more complicated by the fact that the Hellsing mansion is in the middle of hosting the Round Table Council, the attack. Seeing that the greatest leaders of England are under attack, Walter and Saras are drawn into action. We eventually find that the perpetrators of the attack are two vampire brothers, Luke and Jan Valentine. Jan, the younger brother, is at the helm of a legion of ghouls who easily slaughter the Hellsing troops. Luke engages Alucard in battle, while Jan manages to find his way to Integra when Walter and Saras intervene. Walter leads with his close quarters attacks, while Saras hangs back to provide armed assistance. Saras finds herself facing Jan and pins down the vampire with a grapple that she had mastered during her police training. Though there is a moment of relief, hopes of victory are shattered. Jan reveals that the Hellsing troops had been turned into ghouls. Jan breaks free of Saras's hold and throws her to the hungry ghouls. But this sends the young vampire into a fit of blind rage, which leads her to massacre the ghouls. Meanwhile, Integra and the other members of the council manage to defeat Jan by riddling him with gunshot. Though the vampire tries to recover, an unknown entity sets him on fire from the inside. Not really the best way to die, to be honest. With his last breath, the younger Valentine utters the word millennium, leaving behind a vague clue about the perpetrators of the heinous assault. In the aftermath of this attack, Integra arranges a meeting with Maxwell, the leader of Iscariot Section 8 at the British Imperial War Museum. Though the meeting with the shrew clergyman doesn't really go well, Saras still manages to stop Alucard and Anderson from tearing the entire place down by pretending to be a tour guide. After the meeting, Saras has her first encounter with the mercenary crew Wild Geese. But before the comrades can easily get to know each other, Alucard shoves Saras into a coffin. When Saras finally steps out, the duo is already in Brazil, prepping for a fight with the Rio SWAT team. Saras exhibits disgust at the idea of hunting down regular humans, which causes Alucard to berate her. Still, there's not much time for words, as a fight with Millenniums, Tublicane, Alhambra quickly ensues. Alucard takes on the fierce vampire while Saras assists with her guns. Despite this, Tublicane is able to evade every single gunshot until Alucard finally takes him down. After this, we only catch small glimpses of Saras during crucial events, like the meeting between Helsing, Iscariot, and the Queen of England. During Millennium's bloody invasion of London, Saras and the Wild Geese are stationed at the Helsing mansion. Since Alucard has been drawn away from the city, it now falls upon Saras to protect her benefactors. This is not an easy task, by any means, as the mansion is soon attacked by the skilled psychological manipulator, Zoran Blitz, and her horde of undead soldiers. Saras manages to hold the vampire off with her new weapon, the Halkonen, too. Here, Saras exhibits newfound skills and prowess, which leaves most of her comrades extremely impressed. It'd also be interesting to note that this is when Saras's friendship with Pip Bernadotte, the leader of the Wild Geese, begins to blossom. The poor guy even tries to steal a kiss, but fails miserably. Well, at least nothing terrible will happen to the charming Frenchman, right? The battle for the Helsing mansion begins to unfold, and Zoran's illusion take most of the troops by surprise. However, Saras manages to help the soldiers using a couple of tricks from Alucard. Despite this, the undead Nazis manage to barge into the building, and a truly terrifying bloodbath begins inside the hallowed halls of the Helsing mansion. Many of the Wild Geese are butchered violently, while Saras tries her best to take the assailants down. Pip and his squad find themselves pushed back by the overwhelming number of enemies. But even in such a dire situation, Pip remains confident in Saras's ability. But by the time Saras finally makes it to them, Pip has already been grievously injured. As she sets off to face off against Zoran, Pip wishes he could have kissed her. Call that foreshadowing, if you will. As the battle between Zoran and Saras begins, our young protagonist finds herself caught in her worst memory. Zoran uses this opportunity to slice off Saras's arm and stab her with her scythe. Saras seems to be on the brink of defeat when Pip intervenes by hitting Zoran in the face with a rifle. Using the last bit of his strength, he throws Saras over his shoulders, but their escape is cut short when Zoran's scythe pierces through his abdomen. Saras, who has been blinded and stabbed, tries to get Pip to safety, but it's all in vain. With his dying breath, Pip moves in and steals a kill from Saras. The couple takes this brief moment to hold on to each other while Pip beckons Saras to feed on his blood. As Pip's life slowly fades away, Saras gives in to her grief and lets out a haunting scream filled with rage and agony. Then, she swoops down and finally drinks Pip's blood. This turns the young fledgling into a true creature of the night. With this newfound strength, Saras is able to make easy work of the remaining Nazis, as well as Zoran. After the battle at the mansion, Saras goes off to save Integra from the Iscariot priests. Eventually, she meets Alucard, who has reverted to his original form for the Battle of London, and even she is surprised by her immortal master's unusual appearance. Over the course of the next few chapters, Saras has witnessed to numerous pivotal events, like Alexander Anderson's death at the hands of Alucard, as well as Walter's betrayal of Helsing. In the dying stages of the encounter, Saras and Integra are called up to the Do Ex Machina airships in order to fight with Millennium's leaders, the Major and the Captain. The duo splits as Integra goes off to look for the Major, while Saras takes on the feral Captain. A gun battle ensues, but not a single bullet finds its marks. Eventually, the Captain and Saras move to hand-to-hand combat, where we finally learn the true extent of the Captain's powers, as the man literally transforms into a wolf with otherworldly strength and mist-like intangibility. Saras finds herself on the recovering end and is knocked through the floor into a storage room, which just happens to be filled with confiscated treasures from decades ago. This is when she begins to feel the presence of her first familiar, Pip, which reinvigorates her. As Sir Ross rejoins the fight, it becomes even more evident that she is outmatched. However, in an unexpected move, the captain hands her an object that ends up changing the tide of the battle. It seems to be a silver tooth ripped from the mouth of the Jewish captive. This alerts Bernadotte to the fact that the captain had just handed them the final weapon they'd need to defeat him. The two combatants ready themselves for a final clash, and it's clear that this one is going to be final. Bernadotte guides Sir Ross, and soon the two fighters hit each other with enough force to literally explode their entire limbs. In the final moments of this violent encounter, Sir Ross manages to pin the captain's leg, while Bernadotte stabs the Nazi in the heart with the silver tooth. Before exiting the Nazi Zeppelin, Sir Ross blows the defeated major's head away before carrying her master Integra to safety. We then move 30 years into the future, when the scars of the bloody assault have almost healed. We learn that Sir Ross has now been promoted to Alucard's role in the Hellsing organization. However, one morning, she rushed to Integra's chamber after hearing the sound of gunshot. To her surprise, it's none other than Alucard, who has somehow found his way back to their reality. At last, the master and the student are reunited. I guess you could call that a happy ending. Sir Ross-Victoria's intricate relationship. Alucard, throughout the story, it becomes more and more evident that Sir Ross' fate is intricately tied to that of her master. In many ways, she serves as Alucard's foil, as she contrasts his dark, brooding persona perfectly. Though both of them had really traumatizing pasts, Alucard basically gave in to his rage, while Sir Ross became a policewoman to help others facing the same hardship. Despite their differences, Sir Ross is fiercely loyal to her master and will aid him even in acts that she can't commit, like murdering human soldiers. She exhibits unwavering faith in her master, even after his disappearance in the war, which is a testament to how deep their bond really is. Sir Integral Fairbrook Wingate's Hellsing. As the two main heroines of the saga, these two women exhibit a strong friendship that goes beyond the master-slave relationship that Integra has with Alucard. Integra openly trusts and shows affection towards Sir Ross, and can even get her to control her violent rage. Sir Ross also grows to admire and respect Integra deeply, to the point that she becomes her primary aide after the events of the war. Philip Bernadette. Sir Ross shares an affectionate and almost romantic relationship with the lovable rascal Pip. Though their love isn't given too much time to blossom, they certainly have a strange chemistry with each other. Though they were rivals when they first encountered each other, the relationship matured over time. They grew closer to each other. After Sir Ross consumed Pip's blood, he began residing inside Sir Ross as a familiar, even coming to her aid in battle. Walter C. Dornez. For most of the series, Walter was a highly respected senior and mentor in Sir Ross's eyes. The two seemed to genuinely care for each other. However, all of that changed when the butler of the Hellsing betrayed the organization. Despite no longer being allies, the duo wished well, and Sir Ross seemed visibly sad upon learning about Walter's passing. Marvelous Murder. Hellsing is a grim, dark, and extremely violent show. Perhaps that's what makes Sir Ross-Victoria's warmth so essential in the grand scheme of things. Not only is she a strong, resilient warrior who has withstood some of the greatest tragedies in her life, but she can also be charming and funny when the situation calls for it. This diverse nature makes her one of our favorite characters from the entire saga. But what do you think? What other characters should we analyze next? Do let us know in the comments below. Well, that's it for this one, but don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay updated with all our marvelous content. It's goodbye for now, but don't worry, because we'll catch you in the next one.